Well, good morning. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. So glad you could join me today out here in the vegetable garden. It's a beautiful day here in Pennsylvania. It's Memorial Weekend coming up, and so, you know, it's been a nice sunny weekend. The plants are just thriving under this nice sunshine. Well, anyhow, I just returned from Ray's greenhouse, and I wanted to share some tips and ideas with you on how to plant Beauregard sweet potato slips in your vegetable garden. So thanks for joining me today. Well, before we plant these in the vegetable garden, let's just talk about these Beauregard sweet potatoes. These are one of the most popular sweet potato varieties. They are a dark red-orange skin with moist, sweet orange flesh. Early, widely adapted, and produces a high percentage of marketable roots. And they like full sun. And you space these about 10 inches apart. Rows are about 30 inches apart, maybe a little bit more depending on the size of your bed. And then sweet potatoes need well-drained soil that's not too rich. Work 1 inch of compost or other organic matter in the soil prior to planting. Tubers develop best in loose soil. And then I'm going to be planting these in my raised beds, and I'm using the composted leaf mulch that's amended with topsoil. And then water plants weekly to keep soil consistently moist. Sweet potatoes are very sensitive to frost. Light frost damage leaves and can cause roots to rot. Protect newly planted seedlings from late spring frost by covering plants with straw or a frost blanket. And then harvesting potatoes are usually ready as the ends of vines begin to turn yellow or just before frost. Harvest before frost. Cool temperatures can reduce tuber quality and storage. And then as far as storage goes, you can store your sweet potatoes in a cool, dry spot. Do not refrigerate or store below 50. Cured sweet potatoes keep up to 6 months when stored around 60 degrees with high humidity. A basement is ideal, though an air-conditioned storage room or pantry works too. I'll generally be keeping mine out in the garage. Well, anyhow, I ended up buying 20 of these sweet potato slips from Ray's, and if you buy 20 or more, they end up being 15 cents a piece. Otherwise, you'd pay 20 cents a piece, which is still a great deal. And so, you know, I'm told that this variety of sweet potatoes can produce anywhere from 3 to 6 pounds per plant. And so, you know, if you do your math, you know, 15 cents for 6 pounds of potatoes. I also read some reviews where, you know, one potato was the size of a football, or, you know, 5-6 pounds, you know, for one sweet potato. So I'm really looking forward to planting these in the garden. I did do a recent video where from Ray's I purchased the red Jersey sweet potato slip and also the yam. The yam, of course, we're all familiar with that. And so you know, after learning about this Beauregard variety of sweet potatoes, I thought I'm going to go back to Ray's and see if I can find room in one of my raised garden beds. And so I was able to find some room. And so why don't we start planting these in the garden? So follow me along, and I'm going to show you which raised bed I'm going to be planting these in. Hi, Bailey. So let's head up here to the upper raised bed here, and I'm going to be planting these sweet potato slips in this bed right here. I do have some snap peas that I planted here a couple months ago. You can see March 24th, and they're coming along nicely. Nice, but you know, this is a 4 foot by 8 foot bed, And I figured I'm going to plant these in here, and then once those peas are done, I'll be pulling them out, and these sweet potatoes will be growing rather nice by then. And so these are the sweet potato slips that I purchased from Ray's. Bailey, of course, is curious about what they are. What are you doing there, Bailey? You stay away from those. Okay, so let's start planting these. So take your garden fork and, work through your soil real good. Get it nice and loose. It's so important to make sure you have your soil nice and loose, because these sweet potato vines, you want them to be able to just spread out far and wide through this soil here. And so, work down your bed, making sure your fork can go in as deep as possible. And then another thing I do too is I take my hoe or my fork and I turn it the other direction. That way you can be sure this soil is going to be as loose as possible. It may take a little bit longer to do this, but it's well worth the effort. In the long run, you'll be able to produce more tubers. Plus, it's also good exercise, I figure. And so work it both directions in your garden bed. And you also want to keep your soil poor here. You don't want to fertilize, because you don't want to have all green tops. And so work your fork through your garden area, both directions. And another nice thing about this garden fork, using this, is it doesn't disturb the soil web, the microorganisms in the soil. So now that you've went through your soil and made it nice and loose, take a rake or the back of your fork and just level it off pretty nice. And you may have noticed me working on these mats all the time. And so something I would suggest for you to do, protect your knees. I'm 61 years old now, and I don't have any knee problems or joint problems. And of course I contributed that to most of that to my plant-based lifestyle, was all my joint pain went away. But nevertheless, I would rather prevent problems, and work on these mats really makes it nice, keeps my pants a little bit cleaner too. So anyhow, I have a little story pole here. I marked it 10 inches apart. I made this when I planted the other sweet potato slips. And then, I came back about 10 inches, rock it back and forth to mark a row. And then I came over about another 24 inches or more, a little bit more, rock it back and forth. And then to make a row. And then I'm going to just space that, parallel that right along the edge there of the groove. So I went ahead and already planted the back row here, and then you want to lay out your slips so you separate them ahead of time. And then you could either use a little hand trowel again, but this soil's so loose that I'm just going to dig them by hand. And I'm going to end up planting these about 4 to 5 inches deep. It all depends on the size of your slip. But another nice thing about these sweet potato slips, or growing sweet potatoes, is that you don't have to hill them like your normal potatoes, like your red New Orleans or some of your Adirondack potatoes that I grew. In fact, that's something I need to do, is I have my red New Orleans, I need to hill them up right now. And so you're just simply going to dig a hole and plant them in there again, and I'm following this 10-inch spacing that I have here on my one pole there. And like I said, this is my first time for growing these, and I'm really excited to do this because, again, I just know the harvest is going to be amazing. You get a couple 100 pounds of sweet potatoes for only a mere couple dollars. And being that we're plant-based, potatoes and rice, that's our fuel source. We've moved away from the meats and the dairies and the oils, and of course my wife and I, we've experienced amazing results in our health in doing so. So anyhow, just something very simple to do. And I have a few other, I have like 3 or 4 left over of these slips, and I'm going to go find another spot to plant these in my garden. And so now that they're all planted in the ground, you want to just, you know, make sure they're well watered. I have to say I just love this new $20 watering can. I just love how balanced it is, and it makes it nice and simple. Puts out a nice fountainhead of water. And so I had already watered the back ones. And so there you go. That's pretty much what it takes to plant these. Very simple to do. And again, you know, you spend a couple dollars up front, and you know, you're just going to have a wonderful harvest of sweet potatoes. Again, I'm really looking forward to that. So anyhow, if you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to leave them in the section below. It's a nice sunny day here in Pennsylvania, and you know, we're having some sun the next couple days, so it's really going to do a world of good for all these plants. So anyhow, I just want to thank you for joining me today out here in the vegetable garden. So hope you have a great day. So until next time, this is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred.